let's talk about one of the most incredible stories in all of Japanese history. It's about a man named Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and his story is just wild. He started out as the son of a peasant farmer and somehow ended up as the absolute ruler of Japan. His journey is more than just a history lesson. It's a masterclass in strategy, ambition, and really, it pulls back the curtain on what overnight success actually looks like.
Okay, so picture this. The year is 1590. We are right at the tail end of the Sengoku period, Japan's age of warring states. For like 100 years, the country's been just completely torn apart by these rival warlords, the daimyos. But now one guy, our guy, Hideyoshi, is this close to unifying the entire nation. But of course, there's always one last problem, right?
And this is that problem. Odawara Castle. I mean, look at it. It's perched up on a hill. It's got all these natural defenses. This was the stronghold of the super powerful Hojo clan. For centuries, this castle was their symbol of defiance. And get this, it had never, ever fallen in a siege. People thought it was literally impregnable.
So just try to imagine you're a soldier inside Odawara. You've been under siege for months, but hey, you're not worried. You've got plenty of food, strong walls. You've been through this before. You wake up one morning, you look out at the opposing hill, same as you do every day, and you can't believe your eyes.
Yep, you heard that right. Where there used to be just a hill covered in trees, there is now an entire castle. Just there, staring them down. It was like it appeared out of thin air overnight. Can you even imagine the psychological blow? It was just devastating. The Hojo's morale? Absolutely shattered. They pretty much surrendered on the spot.
So the big question is, how did he do it? Was it magic? Some kind of miracle? Or was this overnight castle actually the final, brilliant move in a meticulous game of strategy that Hideyoshi had been playing for years? Well, let's break it down.
First up, let's talk about this overnight castle. We're going to separate the myth from the reality, because honestly, the truth is way more impressive than the legend.
So the myth is this amazing story of a castle just magically appearing. But the reality? The reality is a story of incredible foresight. See, Hideyoshi's man had been secretly building the castle's frame for weeks, completely hidden by the trees. The whole overnight thing, that was the big reveal. He had thousands of his troops cut down all the trees in one night, unveiling the castle that was already there. It was pure psychological warfare, a brilliant trick built on a foundation of genius-level logistics.
Now, to really get why this worked so well, you gotta see things from the Hojo's side. Their strategy was simple, and it had always worked. They'd stock up on months and months of food, then they'd burn all the rice fields in the area, scorched earth tactics, so the invading army couldn't find anything to eat, and then they'd just wait. The attackers would eventually starve and go home. They were totally confident it was gonna work again.
But it didn't work this time. 3 months pass, and Hideyoshi's massive army is still there. They're not starving. In fact, their morale seems pretty high. Suddenly, the Hojo were the ones running low on food, while Hideyoshi's guys seemed totally fine. The Hojo's entire strategy just failed. How is that even possible? To understand that, you have to understand the man himself.
So who exactly was this master strategist? Well, let's rewind and look at the unbelievable rise of the sandal bearer. I mean, just look at this. This is the story of Hideyoshi's journey in 2 images. From a nobody, a lowly servant, to the de facto ruler of all Japan. In a society that was all about who your parents were, his climb to the top was completely unheard of. And this really sums up just how low he started. He wasn't born a samurai. His dad was a farmer. His first real gig, working for the powerful warlord Oda Nobunaga, was as his sandal bearer. I mean, we're basically talking about being his personal valet.
In a world where your birth decided your entire life, Hideyoshi's path was just incredible. He had no famous family name, no connections. He climbed the ladder because his boss, Oda Nobunaga, saw that he had raw talent, a sharp mind, and was fiercely loyal. He had to prove his worth every single day, on and off the battlefield.
And that brings us to the real secret sauce of his success. It wasn't some kind of battlefield magic. It was the revolutionary and, let's be honest, kind of boring work of actually forging a nation. So this is the real kicker. Long before he ever showed up at Odawara, Hideyoshi was doing the hard, unglamorous work. He standardized weights and measures. Why? So he could build a reliable nationwide tax system to fund everything. He poured money into modernizing roads and transport. And this is my favorite part. He created a vacation system for his generals during long sieges so they could go home and see their families. Who does that? It kept morale through the roof. That's why his army wasn't starving at Odawara. It was the best supplied, best managed fighting force Japan had ever seen, and it was all because of years of what was essentially paperwork and infrastructure projects.
There's this famous poem that just perfectly captures his whole style. His predecessor, Nobunaga, was all about force. If the cuckoo doesn't sing, kill it. His successor, Ieyasu, was all about patience. Wait for it. But Hideyoshi, his philosophy was persuasion. If the cuckoo doesn't sing, coax it. He was a master negotiator, a guy who would rather win you over. But, and this is key, he always backed up that persuasion with overwhelming logistical and military power.
Okay, so Hideyoshi unifies Japan. Now what? He's got a new problem. How to make sure it stays that way? And more importantly, how do you stop the next ambitious peasant from trying to do exactly what you just did?
Well, his solution was a policy called the katanagari, or sword hunt. In 1588, he put out an order. All weapons, swords, spears, you name it, had to be taken from anyone who wasn't a samurai. He basically disarmed the entire population.
Now, the official reasons he gave for this sounded pretty good. He said it was to stop peasant revolts, to bring about lasting peace. He argued, hey, now farmers can just focus on farming and get rich. And for good measure, he said all the confiscated weapons would be melted down to build a giant statue of the Buddha, which would bring blessings to everybody. A real win-win, right? But here's where it gets really ironic, almost hypocritical, right? This whole policy locks in a rigid class system. And the guy enforcing it? He's the one person who completely smashed through that system himself. The ultimate social climber was basically pulling the ladder up right behind him. He was making sure that nobody could ever follow in his footsteps.
And that brings us to the final, darker chapter of his life: power and paranoia. What happens when the guy who's achieved everything becomes obsessed with the fear of losing it all?
So after finally unifying Japan, Hideyoshi's ambition just kept going. He looked overseas and launched two massive, incredibly costly, and ultimately disastrous invasions of Korea. His big dream was to conquer China. The master strategist, the great unifier, he overreached. And as his health started to fail, his paranoia just grew and grew, all focused on one thing: making sure his very young son would inherit everything.
This number, well, this represents a truly tragic turn. See, for years, Hideyoshi didn't have a son, so he named his nephew as his heir. But then, late in life, his own son was born, and Hideyoshi's paranoia just took over. To secure his infant son's future, he ordered his nephew to commit ritual suicide. And then, he had his nephew's entire family, we're talking more than 35 people, women and children included, executed, just to wipe out any possible rival.
And so, that leaves us with this final kind of haunting question. You look at the statue of him, the great unifier, immortalized in bronze. But how does this brilliant strategist, this peasant who built an entire empire through pure cleverness and persuasion, how does he fall so far into paranoia and just raw brutality? His story is this incredible reminder of the amazing heights one person can reach, but it's also a really chilling warning about the true corrosive price of holding on to absolute power.